And what we're seeing now in the marketplace, not only here in the United States, but around the world, it's an issue of scarcity. We don't have enough energy to go around to meet the needs of growing populations and growing economies, which is resulting in higher prices across the world itself. So I mean, it's a basic economic lesson that we need to take away from this crisis that's been created primarily by a Russian invasion of Ukraine that's been exacerbating the energy situation around the world. But it's a very fundamental lesson that we have to take away. The answer, however, is almost equally simple in that if we increase supply of energy across the world, we should see prices moderate. So as we think about this both on the industry side, from a business standpoint, as well as from a public policy side, we should focus on that. What does it take to increase energy supply around the world? So in the United States, for instance, we can do more to increase the incentives or to increase the availability of energy infrastructure, which allows the product to actually reach the markets that it's designed to reach. That also occurs or is also true in places like Europe, and it's certainly true in places like Africa, where energy infrastructure is often what's needed. So it's not just the production of fossil fuels or the production of renewable energy, it's actually getting it to the right market. Creating the right incentives for certain types of energy production or creating the incentives, as we just talked about, for infrastructure development is important to do. So I applaud the policymakers for taking those steps. It's also important for us to remember, though, that these can't be exclusively policy-driven decisions. If they are, then they create uncertainty in the marketplace that will cause at least some companies and at least some industries to withhold investment, because the policy world can change very rapidly. So it's very important that we not have this be a one-sided conversation where it's just governments driving public policy to affect some outcome, some political outcome. Well, I think the latest developments, especially in 2022, may set the world back with regard to 2030 goals and 2050 goals from an environmental standpoint. I think it's too early to tell, but just intuition tells me that we're probably going to see some retraction of those goals, at least in the near term. Does that mean we're going to be off track for the long term? No, I don't think so. I think what's going to happen over a period of time is that you're going to continue to see a transition to cleaner and cleaner fuels. And does that mean an exclusion of fossil fuels? No, it does not. We're going to start to see technology developments in that area, as we have seen over the course of the last 1, 2, 3 decades, that are going to allow those fuels to be used in a much more efficient, much more clean fashion than they have been in the past. And all of that contributes to the environmental goals. So we're going to see a broad-based approach. We're going to continue to see an all-of-the-above approach, if you will, to both energy production and to environmental stewardship. It's very obvious what's happened in the United States, for instance, where natural gas has in many places displaced more carbon-intense fuels. That's happened across the world, to the extent it happens in developing countries like India, even in more developed countries like China. You will see enormous environmental goals. So yes, fossil fuels, all energy sources, at this moment in time are part of the environmental stewardship that we all want. It's very important that the industry engage with government on an open and fair and transparent basis. It is equally important, however, that regulators, government policymakers at the congressional level, federal level, state level, engage with the industry openly, fairly, and transparently. We have to reestablish those relationships. And when we do that, the consumer, the public, the voting public, the buying consumer, both understand that there is an element of trust there that has come together, and as a result, they will participate as well in a much more constructive way. I know that sounds somewhat simplistic, but it is true. That's how it works here in the United States. I'm sure it happens that way in many parts of the world, and I think we have to get back to that. The world oil market looks different today than it did just a year ago, or perhaps 10 years ago, certainly. We may see the same thing happen in the natural gas market as well. As Europe continues its divorce away from Russia, we may see some fragmentation in the marketplace. That should not, however, divide us or perhaps move us away from some of the goals that we've all established. And that includes, obviously, our climate goals, but it also includes our energy security goals. Those things haven't changed. And I think you won't see any division on those larger goals. Industry leaders, obviously policy leaders in that room, just an amazing amount of talent sitting around that table. And the conversation, I think, was robust, very succinct, People got to the point very, very fast, which I think is a good thing, especially in places like Washington, where we tend to talk for a very long time. But look, I think the overall conversation was very, very fruitful. From it, I look forward to the report. I also look to see what it is that we might do as part of the industry to affect some of the things that we talked about here today.